Gibson SG is one of the most iconic guitars of all time, and I've always been a fan. It's such a classic design that even the knockoffs are really rad.
It's freaking bats.
I've been fascinated by just about every iteration of this guitar, especially the Supreme. So naturally, when Gibson re-released the Supreme this year, I completely flipped out. You can pick one of these up for about $3,500, which is a little steep for my modest income, but man, it sure is tempting. If you're broke like me, we gotta start exploring other options. My question is, can we build one of these at a fraction of the cost? Can it be done? Let's find out. He's taking a piss.
It's the Parthenon, dude.
So me and the fellas struck out to Nashville again, and we hit up all the best spots.
It's the Parthenon, dude.
Eventually, we landed at the Gibson garage. Whether you love them or hate them, you cannot deny that the Gibson garage makes for the best presentation of these classic instruments. There it was, in wine red, the Gibson SG Supreme. I won't lie to you, the thought of harvesting my own kidneys for this work of art is very tempting. I have to stick to my plan though. You see, if Gibson made a guitar exactly how I wanted it, I would own it already. Brand loyalty be damned. There are hundreds, if not dozens, of independent guitar companies out there making excellent products for working musicians. That being said, I think I'm going to build this thing using the parts caster method. I don't want to do this thing alone, so I went to my buddy Jake, who I've known since high school. We've been modifying and building guitars for years. So obviously, I'm going for a Gibson design, but I love the way a Tele plays. There's just something about him. So I started with a neck from Warmoth. All in all, with the way I spec'd this thing out, it run me about $660. Yeah, that's like a big chunk of the budget right there. The body was from the Canadian Craftsman. Check these guys out, because they have some of the finest guitar bodies I've ever seen. So the neck came unfinished. Luckily, Jake had some red stain from a previous build. We layered it pretty thick until we matched the body. After doing some research, I realized the body was finished in a hard wax oil. If I wanted to give this thing a poly finish, theoretically, I could hit it with a de-waxed shellac, and that could act as a bonding agent between the two different finishes. So, I did that. And then I topped it off with several coats of a poly finish. It looked pretty good, but it was very textured. So I took matters into my own hands and mixed up some resin. So here I am, pouring epoxy resin all over this guitar. I don't advise this whatsoever. Here's why. It's a huge mess. You can get a good result. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And it's only because I've had success in the past that I even tried this to begin with. Everything looked great for about an hour. But let me tell you, I made a mistake. I don't know if I mixed it wrong or if I just had a bad batch of resin. Either way, this stuff did not cure. I felt like a fool. I'm having a real crisis at this point.
It's the Parthenon, dude. It's the Parthenon, dude. It's the Parthenon, dude. It's the Parthenon, dude. It's the Parthenon.
But in the shame of my defeat, and in the name of hyper-consumerism, I decided to do exactly what I told myself I wouldn't do. I ordered the Supreme. All I can say is, thank Kato Kalin for Zounds. I've been using Zounds for years. These guys offer a payment plan. There's no way I could buy this thing outright.
It's just not in the cards for me, at least not right now.
In fact, this is the only way I'll be able to afford this thing.
Now that I have the guitar, and I played it a couple of weeks, I'd say it sounds good, but I kind of sold my amp so I could afford payments on this thing. Priorities. Feels sticky.
I want to have a brief discussion about that.
So Gibson does this thing where they shoot their guitars with the nitrocellulose. Gibson does this thing where they shoot their guitars with a nitrocellulose lacquer. Not everyone's a big fan of that. Now I get it. People dig the checking, the weathering. Over time, most guitars do that. I don't know if I'm a fan of that. I do think it's cool. You go to some of these shops in Nashville and they got these player grade guitars and they're all checked out, man. It's pretty dope. I don't know if I like that personally on a guitar that beautiful. I don't know. Only time will tell because kind of think it's inevitable. I just bought a guitar. I'm not exactly planning on an additional upkeep aspect. My old Epiphone has a poly finish, and I don't see that cracking and checking over time like the Gibson. But who knows? I may fall in love with it. So what did we learn from all this? Number 1, do not be impatient. Number 2, do not go in debt. It's a lot of money to pay for a guitar, especially if you can build something of similar or greater quality for half of the price. Find me in the comments. Now that I've ultimately failed, I could push forward and follow through with the initial project, but no, because Jake helped me so much and because he's just a master at this whole thing, I'm going to donate those parts to him. I don't have time to follow through with it, which is not like me to abandon something that I'm really passionate about. But I know for a fact that he can do a better job at it than I can. I want to thank Retro Wolf 88 for helping me film this.
You know, it's kind of growing on me.
And my girlfriend, Dolores, without which none of this would be possible. Love you, baby. If you like what we do here, please subscribe. I got a box of forks in that chair over there.